I looked myself in the mirror and I said that this is not the life that you were put on this planet to live. And if you're going to do something with it, it has to be spectacular, because you did not go through all of this to come out on the other side and do nothing with it. You may have clicked this title expecting a built out for you roadmap from point 1 through to point 5, but I'm going to give you something slightly better, something a bit more meaningful, something a bit deeper, and it's going to give you way more insight as to how you can build your own roadmap from getting out of a really challenging spot in life, let's say, to becoming quite a high performer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story. Instead of giving you 1 to 5 points, do this, do that, do the other, we're not going to do that today. But I'm going to tell you the story of my journey. I'm going to give it you in a way where if you do, or you apply some of the things that I have done personally over the past 14 years, you will come out of the other side of wherever it is that you're at right now, a different person. This is by no means therapy. This is me giving you a roadmap with a story, a journey attached to it that is set in stone. What helped me move from becoming the person that I was that was struggling in a mental health breakdown, the person that I am today, who sees myself as a high achiever. I do demand a lot from myself personally, but it's also because I want a lot from life. I'm going to give you this step-by-step guide. And this starts 14 years ago at the peak of what put me in a bad place. So I won't tell you the ins and outs as to kind of like what got me there, because it's a personal story. But everybody's got a personal story that puts them in a place that you might identify with right now that is the thing that you're struggling with most. And that thing could be the thing that tipped you over the edge one day. It could put you into depression. It could have created anxiety. It could have created a list of mental health illnesses that you are currently struggling with. It might even be a physical illness, because a lot of these actually lead into how we end up physically feeling too. It could be that you've gained weight from something. It could be that your confidence is decreased. It could be that you're just not performing in an area of your life or your career or relationship that's really feeling like it's rewarding to you. Whatever the story is for you right now, this will still help you move forwards. So the first thing, and this is kind of where it starts, the road to recovery, the road to this step-by-step process really starts at the point of acknowledging. So I went through this whole 2-year mental health struggle. And I had developed this huge list of mental health struggles. I don't like to say illnesses, because we all experience them in different ways. But I was using a shopping bag of medication every single month to manage how I was feeling. And it was one that contradicted another, that combated another, that kind of cascaded into another. And it was just this list of illnesses and medication. And it completely detached me from reality. It completely detached me from my personal sense of self-awareness. I was just floating around, existing. And this happened between the ages of 28 to 30. It got to a point where it was 2 weeks before my 30th birthday. I looked dead in the mirror and I asked myself this question: were you put here today to go through this? Or were you put here today for this to be your life? And there was something about that, this to be your life, that really did not sit well with me, because I had things in my mind that I wanted to be able to achieve in life, experience, live out. And this was not the life that I intended for myself to experience, but it was where I was at this point. And I said to myself 2 weeks before that 30th birthday, this is not what you were put here to do. This is not what you were put here to experience. So what are you going to do about it? Because this isn't the version of you that you know. This is not the person that you know to be that's looking you in the mirror right now. This is a shell of an individual that has gone through something that has just lost themselves completely. And I know what it feels like to lose yourself completely in any of these moments where you feel like life's maybe not on your side no more. Maybe you've tried some things. Maybe you expect a little bit more than what life's been giving you, or you've been putting in and you've just not been getting back out. And it's beat you up and it's put you down. I had a series of very unfortunate events that happened in a very short space of time that mentally I just could not piece together. I just couldn't keep contained what needed to be contained to work my way through it. I was inexperienced in life. I was inexperienced in every single one of these areas that was just cascading in a very short space of time. And I had no sense of self-control around any of these with regards to what was happening. So the first thing I had to do was acknowledge that this wasn't the life that I had intended for myself to live where I currently was. I did not want to be on this huge list of medication. I didn't want all of these stigmas around mental health. I didn't want to be the person that I was becoming, but I had an issue with communication. My communication skills were breaking down cognitively. There was just too much going on that I couldn't focus on. And I started to retract from just being social, started to retract from just being communicative. I wasn't able to do any of these things to a degree that would just hold normal conversation. And I'd got social anxiety, mood and personality disorder, depression. I'd got OCD, I'd got insomnia, I'd got agoraphobia. I was tested for schizophrenia and bipolar. There was a list. It feels very exposing to have to say all of these things. But all of this was my reality at that point in time. And I am somebody up until that point that I'd taken my health relatively seriously simply because I'd grown up and gone through my sports science qualifications at an early age in life, because I was always a pretty active person. But one thing I'd never really associated to health was the mental side of things, the mental aspect of what was going on in life. I got into business very early on in life, self-employed from a very late teens, early 20s. So I was learning a lot of life lessons hard, quick. And there was part of me that probably wasn't experienced enough to deal with all of that. But it soon came from this point in life, this particular lesson. I looked myself in the mirror and I said that this is not the life that you were put on this planet to live. And if you're going to do something with it, it has to be spectacular, because you did not go through all of this to come out on the other side and do nothing with it. It was at that point I knew that I needed to recognize and acknowledge that everything that was going on was very severe. And I had to start taking bite-sized chunks out of all of the problems to start feeling like I could regain sense of control in some of these areas. So that's the second point. So you go through acknowledgement first, and then you've got to start looking at what can I regain control of? What is it in these things that I'm doing right now that I can regain some control of, that helps me feel like each action that I'm taking starts to move me one step further forwards? So I did. I started focusing on the bigger problems, taking a piece of the bigger problem and getting rid of or just ticking off something that helped me move forwards. When I went through each one of these phases, each one of these processes, in all of these problems that I was facing, things started to feel like I was regaining a sense of self-control. And it was at that point, even though I was still dealing with all of these other issues, and I was bound to the house through agoraphobia, so it made it 10 times harder to get out into the world and deal with these problems like a lot of people could do. I wasn't able to do any of that. So I was having to do it through forms, through individuals that were supporting me, all of these other avenues that I was having to use to help me move forward till I regained enough sense of self-control that I could take on that responsibility for myself. And that took nearly 18 months. I got to a point where 18 months had passed, and now all of a sudden, I was starting to see the reality of I needed to be back out into the world. I needed to be facing these things personally to help me move forward as an individual. This is where the biggest challenge then came, because what happened at this point was it became my responsibility. So this is kind of the next step. So you acknowledge first, then you start to look at all of these bite-sized chunks of regaining self-control. But that acknowledgement and self-control has to lead somewhere in what you're looking to create from this. And that was the responsibility of what it means to you, for you to retake control. Not just take control, but regain control of what it is that you're doing moving forwards. At this point, I had to get really, really uncomfortable challenging myself and what my capabilities were. I was an active person, but I gained a fair amount of weight from being on this medication, antidepressants, etc. And when this was happening, I wasn't self-aware enough to know what was going on in the sense of medication. And I had to make a very informed choice. Now, this is not a choice that I would recommend anybody do. And I'd always say at this point, you know, I've had questions in the past, oh, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't suggest that, I wouldn't tell people that. But this is my story. And I'm going to tell you this because I went cold turkey on the medication. That is not for you to decide, for you to speak to a professional about. I did because I was confident in myself that what I was about to do had a bigger meaning to me than staying on medication and having that be the thing that kind of dictated the outcome. So I did, and I made that decision for myself. Please don't do that unless you're going to speak to somebody, because if you are not in a place that you feel like you are confident to make that decision, then you need to have a conversation with somebody that is hopefully managing or helping you manage what is going on in life right now. But I did. And I said to myself, at no means, at no expense, will I look back and say, I need to be that version of myself to cope in life, because the person that I wanted to be was the person that was coping in life. So I took myself out of the equation and I said, what do I need to do to really help me move forwards? And it was start to have a belief in what I could do was going to help me achieve an outcome. So I started to refocus on things that I'd studied, things that I'd got educated in earlier on in life. And that was going through a sort of I don't want to coin it as a health and fitness transformation, because at the time I didn't even know I was doing that. In all honesty, I was focusing on me, for me, because me is what mattered at that point in time. And by doing so, it kind of led me down this path where I rediscovered what health and fitness really is in a bigger picture. And I think this is what kind of makes me different from all of these other online PTs and coaches and everything else that you want to say that the fitness industry is I've always seen myself as a bit of an outlier. I don't follow the trends. I don't go down the routes of what social media is. I don't look at other influencers and other fitness people and go, well, they're doing this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's all kind of superficial. It's all physical. It's all how you look in the appearance side of things. Whilst it contributes a little bit in my world to the sense of confidence and just having yourself together, it is such a small element. And what I tend to focus on by kind of self-coaching myself through that process was more the fact that by me thinking about how I can prioritize what I need, gained an experience of this vast understanding of what I didn't know at the time, and how mentally the impact of focusing on what I can do cognitively had a better impact on the outcome of health and fitness. Example, that sounds like a lot of words just said in kind of like a jumbled up way. A simplified way of putting this is, if I got up and I put an effort in, I saw the reward on the other end of it. But that effort might mean that where my comfort level is, I'd have to take one step further to challenge that. And I think that is just something that I got very, very good at repetitively over and over and over again, because my need to overcome that problem was a survival need. It's not just a would be nice. It was a survival need. For me to gain any sense of self-independence again, for me to be in control of my life or what I wanted to do and achieve with things, I had to regain a confidence in making my own decisions and following through with them. So it got to a point seeing myself being this fitness enthusiast, let's say, but I wasn't anywhere near this route of influencer. And it's not something that I ever wanted to go down. I started in a way to kind of just maybe document. This is back in the early days of Facebook, little bit on Instagram, but it wasn't really too much of a big thing back then. And I started to document in a way where it was just more of like a family log, so that people could kind of check in with what it was that I was doing. And I started to challenge myself in ways. And it took me 6 months to go from walking to the gym to actually being in a gym. It took me 6 months just to be socially okay, because I had social anxiety, to be in a gym on a treadmill. How many times do you think you have to walk from a house to a gym to get comfortable walking past the reception to go into the gym in itself? It took me 6 months. Doing that over and over again and trying to find that silver lining in every single attempt. Sometimes they felt like they were 10 steps back and not 2 steps forwards. You have to take any small margin of silver lining you can find to say, this is actually something that I could do. I did it today because I couldn't do it yesterday. And the days where you feel like you take 10 steps forwards, you hold on to those as hard as you can, because you will have to look back at some point and say, well, 6 months ago, I couldn't even leave the house. Now I'm at the gym, but I have to turn around and go back home because my social anxiety just becomes too overbearing that I can't be in that place. It then took me a lot longer again to be in that space. And I started to take up calisthenics at that point. And I'm telling you this story because The route that I went down was just rediscovering what activity, what I don't want to use the word nutrition because I wasn't really being nutritious with food. I was just giving myself food that was better than the decisions I was previously making. So obviously, as you can understand, if you're feeling depressed, your confidence is low, if you're on high bouts of medication, all of these things can lead to food choices and decisions that you don't really think about too much. So I was making poor choices. Food quality was low. So my focus really was just to eat better food. I was eating better food, therefore starting to sleep a little bit better. I was moving a bit more frequently. That was having a positive impact. There was just this togetherness of these things that start to fit and synchronize quite well. And it got to a point of me being at around about 12 months of attempting. So I'd gone through 6 months of going into the gym and then sort of like 6 months trying to stay in the gym and become active in that environment by going through using calisthenics, etc. And I was attempting all these different scenarios and not all of them would work out. You have to start looking and recognizing that even though you attempt something, it's not that you are failing, it's feedback in what you're doing. What works for me might not work for another person. So I'm not saying that this is the exact roadmap for you to use, but what I am saying is that try different things that might have a different outcome, that lead down a different route, and you get some feedback from that. All feedback is positive. It's just how you interpret that feedback. So you're not failing if something doesn't work out. You've just found a way that's just not going to work that route. So let's change the direction. That is the point you start to realize that directional change, pivoting at those moments, is the advancing of you getting better. Being stuck somewhere is recognizing that you need to do something different from where you currently are to figure out what's next. And if that doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice. It means you ruled out a possibility, and now you get to choose another avenue to try. In the past 14 years, so the first probably 12 months of that was me regaining a sense of self-control, sharing a little bit on social media, and people that I knew started to pay attention. They started asking me questions. They started saying, Andy, how are you doing X, Y, and Z? And it started to feel a little bit like the purpose behind the whole experience for me was to help other people who were stuck in a way where they didn't feel like they knew how to get out, put this roadmap together for them to try and figure out how they can piece together a sense of self-control that allows them to move forward with all of these elements and through experiences that I've personally used. I am not a person that will coach somebody from a textbook and say that I know how it feels, because you don't. If you've gone through a textbook but say you know how this feels, or you definitively know the outcome of it, you don't know the process. You just know it through text. You've not experienced it. It's a different level of understanding when you have experienced something. And that is something that I started to kind of allow myself to dive fully into in this whole process, is using these experiences that I've gone through, that I was going through, as the cornerstones of what it was that I started to build. They'd ask me what it was that I was experiencing, how I was going about doing things, what it meant to me, really trying to piece together like that one thing that they needed to go, that makes sense. So social media started to grow. I started to share it a little bit more. People show more interest, things started to grow, a business develops out of this. I then start to re-educate myself in areas that, 15 years ago prior to this, when I did qualify, there were, let's just say, not as many things around that you would qualify in. So I started to go down the routes of deeper nutrition, better training strategies, etc., etc. It got to a point where you accumulate enough to know that if you aren't applying the things that you've learned, then the information just it has no relevance. It's just information. And I'm somebody that prefers to know that if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to give time and energy to learning something, then that needs to mean something to me in my life for it to be useful. And then if it's useful to me, I can then pass it on to somebody else. There are countless hours, days, months, years that I've given to background processes that people would struggle to piece together themselves. And I do this to try and help an individual, help myself, understand what it takes to move forwards, to put all this together, to build a successful life on the other side of it. Did I know 14 years ago that by making that decision, looking in that mirror, saying this life is not for you, did I know that I would, could I guarantee, is what I'd say, that I would be nearly 43 years old, fit and healthy, maintain year-round health, in a good mental space, but understanding that the mental aspect of mental health doesn't go away. You learn how to cope and strategize the mechanisms that help you cope day to day. You don't ever get rid of these things. You learn how to deal with them better. Exposure, compartmentalization, even just things like meditation or just taking yourself away from somewhere for 10 minutes when things are a bit too extreme to bring yourself back down to a level that you can understand and process what's going on. Things change chemically when you have gone through these experiences. My brain doesn't work in the same way that it did 20 years ago because of the things that it's been exposed to, because of the subconscious thoughts and the mechanisms that it just throws into play. I've never gone down the route of wanting to say that I am testing for ADHD and all these other things, because it doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day, because the label doesn't define the outcome. What I do defines the outcome. 14 years ago, I chose to not live or continue living that path that I was on at that point in time in life, because I didn't want to live the next 40, 50 years wondering if that's as much as life had to give. And I think this is something that a lot of people get into the mindset of, is that they get to a certain struggle point and they go, well, this is life. This is where life ends, or this is where life is, or this is all life had to deal for me. And they don't ever challenge the what if capabilities. They don't ever get to that point and they say, there's more for me. They don't have the honest conversation with themselves. Because if I asked you today, what would you want in the next 20 years? And what would it take for you to build that over the next 20 years? Chances are you would probably see the struggle at where you're at right now and just go, I don't have the capacity to go that far. I don't have the energy to push continuously to get there. And I'd say you're right. You don't right now. But unless you don't change something that's going on, you'll never know. And I think a lot of people get very uncomfortable with, they need to know that it's guaranteed for the input to be worth the outcome. But the truth is that tomorrow is never going to be guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And you could wake up today knowing that is today potentially one of the last days that you'll see. If it is, are you happy with where things are at? Could you say that if an asteroid hit the planet today and everybody was wiped out, that you lived a life that felt meaningful to you? I didn't know 14 years ago that I would look at life in this way, because life was looked at very differently back then. It was dark. It was shrouded in just misery and pain, and just I did not like the person that I was. And it's taken year on year on year, month to month, different ways of rediscovering me as a person, kind of seeing what you see in the mirror at different stages and going, do I need to change something about where I'm at right now? Because if where I'm at right now is not a good place, if it's not good for me, what do I need to change? If I'm not happy in my appearance, do I need to be more active? If I just feel just off internally, like, what do I need to do? How am I treating the inside of my body? What kind of food am I eating? Am I agitated? Am I angry? Am I just restless? Am I sleeping enough? I was a person that kind of lived life very angrily. I was always annoyed. I was constantly frustrated. I was just wound tight 24/7. And that just kind of, it probably is what gave me the frown line in the center of my face, to be fair. But at this point, I would say that if you are at a point in your life where you don't know where to turn because you feel like it's got to that sticking point and this is it, there is so much more for you that needs to happen yet. You just haven't given yourself the permission to say, actually, you know what? I can do more, because you can. We're all given the same opportunities. We just have to go and find them. We have to create them. We're the ones responsible for making that happen. We're not the ones responsible to say, well, life dealt me this, and don't play that card. That card is not the card that you play today. The card that you're going to play today is the one where you find yourself, you reassert what it means to you to achieve the things that you want in your life. and not just give up on what it is that life could be. One thing I will say is that you go down the route of this discovering who you are. If you give up on that process at some point, you've left so much on the table for what could be. So much. But if you tend to say that you accept where life is right now, I'm going to want to challenge you on that. And I'm the kind of person that I'm going to want to question where you are. I'm going to want to question mentally what you're currently thinking, how you're physically feeling. What is it that you're doing in your day-to-day that's making you feel this way? Who are the people that are surrounding you that's making you feel like and think that this is life? Because you will go through seasons and points and you will not know where you're currently at. But one thing I can guarantee you, and this is the end of the roadmap, is that you will have to acknowledge where you're at. You will have to see what life means to you. You will have to accept that if this is not for you, things have to get a little bit uncomfortable. And then you'll get to a point where you are capable of doing something that is different. But you have to understand that it's going to take something new for you to get a lot better at doing what it is that you want for the outcome to be. So the roadmap doesn't really start with a point 1 to 5. The roadmap is looking yourself in the mirror one day and saying, today is not the day that I accept that this is life right now. Today is not the day that I accept that this is all that there is. You look yourself in the mirror. You acknowledge that you're not happy where you're at. You look at that bite-sized chunk of what you need to do next, and you commit to yourself and say that no matter how many times, no matter how many attempts, I will try my damn hardest and keep trying until I find that one way that works, because not every option, not every door is closed, and you keep opening doors until you find the one that works for you. Now, hopefully, I may have left you with a little bit of something today that helps. And if it has, awesome. If you've got something you'd love to share, if you've got something that you'd like to say, you can reach me at Coach Andy James on every platform. And if you haven't, I hope it leaves you with something to think about with regards to the future that you want to be able to build for yourself. And on that note, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.